Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to modify a VCube 6 so that you can get rid of this annoying clickiness. And it will also prevent you from getting these annoying lockups where the inner mechanism gets out of alignment like that. And the third thing that it will do is perform pop reduction. Because, yeah, those pops are really nasty too. Like, yeah, there we go. It's terrible. So after you do the modification, your cube will perform like this. Nice and smooth. And it's very difficult to get it to pop. See, notice that. It did not want to pop there like before. And I no longer have any trouble with the inner mechanism getting out of alignment. I mean, it's very nice. Now, I'm going to be explaining very little in this video. It's probably because you're going to be watching the instructions several times, and you don't need to hear those details over and over again. So, I have saved all of that for a separate video, and you can watch it by clicking on the link in the description. I recommend that you watch it after watching this one. And for your convenience, I have put the times of each step in the description, so you can just skip ahead to that time and then follow the steps there. Now, I highly recommend that you use a rotary tool like a Dremel for this, because there's just going to be a lot of sanding and a Dremel makes it much easier. So if you don't have one, then you're just going to have to use your own imagination to apply the steps with the tools that you have available. Now, I highly recommend that you do this whole modification in one area, because if you move from place to place and end up losing a piece, then you'll have to search all of those places to find one. So if you lose one and you've been doing it in just one place, you know where to look in that area. You know, I've had a lot of trouble with that, and believe me, you want to do it in one area, because I've had to look all over the house because I've just done it in different places that are most comfortable for me. And as I'm sure you know, the VCube 6 comes with its own lubrication from the VCube company, and I have personally found out that Jigaloo works much better. So when you're doing the modification, all the lubrication should just come off, and you shouldn't have to worry about it at all. Now I'm going to split up this whole modification into 4 separate mods. Now the first one involves gluing just 2 of these inner pieces to the core, and that will get rid of 2/3 of the inner lockups. And this is the easiest modification to do by far. So you don't even need to take the cube completely apart. So I highly recommend that you do it as soon as watching this video. And the second modification involves just sanding down these corner stalks so that they're nice and round, and that will reduce the pops in the VCube 6. This was originally introduced by MasterNZ. If you'd like to see his original video, it's in the description. And in the third modification, you will be sanding off the bumps off of these smaller inner pieces and these large inner pieces. And that will get rid of the clicking from your cube, or at least most of it. And then, to keep the inner mechanism in alignment, you will have to glue in pins. Now, this is the hardest part of the modification, so I highly suggest you watch through this video and think really hard before you apply it. Notice that this is the third version of this video. From my previous versions, people have sent me messages about them having a hard time keeping their pins in there. So just make sure that you want to do it before you try it. And finally, the fourth modification involves putting dirt or sand into it, although toothpaste also works because that's a good abrasive. And even after doing the third modification, there is still a slight clicky feel on the outer 2 layers, and the dirt gets rid of that. So it's nice and smooth. So I'm just going to be using dirt in this video because, you know, it's dirt cheap rather than toothpaste. Alright, I'm going to be using this white VCube 6 that I'm modifying and selling to someone, and I'm in the process of replacing the stickers for him, and I'll explain why I left this red sticker on later on. So, anyway, for the first modification, if you just want to apply just this one, then you only need to take off 3 corner sections. But if you want to do the whole modification, then go ahead and just take the whole cube apart. Okay, so then just take 2 of these pieces with little bumps on them, and then take some super glue here. I'm using this kind. You can get super glue like this. It's in a black and yellow package from Walmart in a 4-pack for only $1, and it works great. So just take some super glue and just send it up into, well, what's nice about this particular glue here is you can see it. And then once you have a sufficient amount, just take it on there and then just, there we go. Okay, that is sufficient. And then just stick it right on the core. Just like that. Very good. And then do the same for the other one. And stick that one on right there. And there we go. Those are the only two pieces that you need to glue to the core. You do not want to glue any more because it'll cause additional lockups. And I'll explain more about that in my explanation video. Now, if that's the only thing you want to do in this modification, go ahead and reassemble it. But since I need to show more stuff, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to continue to disassemble it. And I've got a tutorial on how to take apart and reassemble a VCube 6, so refer to that to take apart and reassemble your cube. Alright, now here is where you will need to glue in the pins if you wish to do the whole modification, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I will not show that now. I'll be showing it at the end, so just to let you know that you want to do it right now so that the glue can dry while you're modifying the rest of the pieces. Alright, now here are the three pieces that you will be modifying. You will be sanding off the bumps off of these pieces so that it's nice and flat like that. And you will be doing the same on these types of pieces. So you sand off that bump there, so it then looks like this. So those only apply to the clicking mechanism. Those bumps cause that. And then we're going to be taking the corner here, and we're going to sand down these stalks so it's more round like this. Okay, so let's start with the corners first, the second modification. So take your Dremel here. I've got mine on this long tube thing. This is just a nice little attachment. So just take it and I'm going to turn up the speed a little bit. Alright, do this. So that looks about right. That should greatly reduce your poppings a lot. So, alright, that's it for the second modification. Now on to the third one, sanding down the bumps on these pieces. And just a note is that when you sand down these bumps, you are committing yourself to gluing in the pins. I mean, the internal mechanism will not stay in alignment without the clicking mechanism, and I'll explain more about that in my modification explanation video. So, alright, let's start with these bumps. Alright, I'm going to be using this bit here. It's not as rough as this one, but there's not as much plastic to sand away. And plus, it's got sand on the end here, which will make it very convenient to just sand away that bump. Just take it and sand that bump away. Okay, and I like to sand this edge right here. Not very necessary, but yeah. Alright. Okay, so that appears to be sufficient. Don't worry about digging into the plastic too much like on this side. You know, this puzzle's very forgiving. You know, it won't make a difference if you do that. So just make sure that you get the bump away. And what it should do is it should smoothly pass over this core. And yep, that looks pretty good. Okay. So now onto this piece. Now what I've noticed about this particular puzzle is that none of these pieces were glued together, so they just split apart easily. Now that will cause complications in sanding it, so if that didn't happen in your VCube 6, just take some super glue and then just stick it on those two edges, and that will be sufficient. Make sure no plastic gets in the way, and then just fit it right together. Now, I prefer to use sandpaper rather than the Dremel on this because it's more straight. Like, with a Dremel, you could have lots of notches in it, but this is just nice and convenient. It makes it go straight. So just start sanding it down. Now, every now and then, check to make sure you're sanding it down flat. Like, for example, whoa, yeah, I already got this end sanded down, but this is still a little more. It's because I was applying greater force on this end, which is causing more friction, which is sanding away more plastic. So, since I tended to do that on this side, I'm going to turn it around. There. Yep, it's looking pretty good. So just sand it away until the smooth plastic completely disappears. Still a little more in there. Try not to sand away too much plastic, but again, this is pretty forgiving. So, okay, so I got that done. Moving on to the other side. Alright, there we go, and just, I don't know if this is very necessary, it just kind of makes me feel better. I like to use this smooth bit on it again to sand away the roughed up plastic, like in this close-up. Yeah, there we go. It's pretty rough. And I also like to sand down these newly sharpened edges too. You know, I don't know if it makes a difference in the overall quality of the cube. It just, yeah, kind of makes me feel better. So now the piece should look like this. This is nicely modified. So, alright, so all you gotta do is do this to the other 11 pieces. Do these for the other 22 pieces. Remember, not 24 because you glued 2 to the core. And then do the corner modification to the other 7 corners. Alright, so now let's move on to gluing in these pins. Now what you're first gonna wanna do is straighten out these 4 screws around these 2 pieces. So we're going to be gluing them in perspective to this top part. So yeah, you only want to concentrate on these 4 screws, not the top one or the bottom, just these 4. So straighten them all out so that they are parallel or perpendicular, however you want to say it, with the core. So, still a little crooked. There we are, that looks perfect. So just do that with the other 3. So now you want to take a pin. It doesn't really matter what kind you get, just as long as it can fit into these screw notches perpendicularly and stick out like this. Thumbtacks will not work because they're too thick, and this end may get in the way, so I'm going to go ahead and cut off the end. Focus, thank you. Kind of focusing, but whatever. Pop. Okay, and then just cut off about that much, and yeah, that should be enough. Basically just enough for you to grip. I mean, you'll be cutting off extra later on. So just kind of put this on the ground on the desk thing and kind of hold the pin tight. Make sure there's no room for the lower part to escape. Say nothing for the top part. There it is. It's sticking up out of the wood a little there. Alright, so take some super glue and just stick a blob on one of the 4 screws that you straightened out. Make sure that glue is coming out before you put it on there, because one very nasty thing is when you get glue that goes down into the core. So, although if that happens, if you do get glue down in there, what you need to do for about the next 10 to 20 minutes is just pull on it and continue to turn it. That will prevent the glue from doing any bonding and it'll just wear off. So just continue pulling and continue turning. So just remember that if you do get any glue down in the core. So I'll demonstrate it if it happens to me, but believe me, I won't be doing it on purpose. Alright, very nice. So that should be enough glue. Then take your pin and you want to stick it in the rivet at an angle pointing up at the glued pieces like this. So just stick it in there, right into the blob, and then anchor it up towards those pieces. So just have it kind of lean in the notches. Here's a nice good close-up of it. So, and it's a bit crooked leaning off to the side. You want it pointing off as straight as possible. There we go. And don't worry if yours seems longer than this. We will be clipping them later on. Alright, so all you have to do is do that for the other 3 screw rivets thingies. Alright, so I got all of my pins glued in. So just a quick reminder, all 4 pins need to be pointing up toward the pieces that you glued to the core, and those will keep the internal mechanism in alignment. Okay, so after you have all the pins glued in and all of the modifying done, go ahead and, just assemble it. And I recommend that you take the sticker with the V-Cube logo, although this red sticker will serve as a fine substitute because I took off all the other stickers. So just think of this as having the V-Cube logo on it. And I recommend that you put it between the two glued pieces that are to the center. You know, these don't still have the bumps on them, so those are the glued ones. So just put it right in between. And when the cube is assembled, it is impossible for this piece to come out from between them. And this will give you a good indication of where the pins are, because you will know that the two glued pieces will always be right here, and that all the pins will be down here on the third axis. So, alright, now what we're going to do is clip the pins so they're not too high. So for one pin, just take out these sets of pieces, and the others. And there's a pin sticking up there. So just kind of push these pieces up against it, and right now that pin is way too high, you can tell. It just needs to scrape a little bit into the bottom. So I'm just gonna take it in there and clip off some excess. Alright, so now, yep, that is pretty good right there. So, and just remember that the pins need to be just the right length. If they're too high, there is a high risk that they could fall out. So, and if they're too low, there's also a risk that the mechanism can still get out of alignment. Like, the pins just won't help. Alright, so just clip the other 3 pins the same way I showed you for that one. Alright, so I'm finished cutting down all the pins, and what we need to do now is break in the plastic. Allow the pins to start scraping into it. You know, they'll create little carves under each centerpiece, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine. That's just part of the breaking in process. So remember that I've got the 4 pins in these positions. So what you want to do is rotate the top layer slowly. Let's see, can I show the pin? Yeah. Oh, there we go. A pin just fell out right there. So this one is probably a little too high. And just for the record, this pin has been in here for, like, the glue has actually been drying for several days, and it happened. But hopefully that won't make a difference, because I found that usually about 3 pins does the trick. So if one falls out, don't fret about it, but I still recommend that you put all 4 of them in case one does fall out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and give it a shot on this other side. Can we see inside? Yeah, you can notice the pin is pushing up on those centerpieces a little bit. So you just want to kind of slowly rotate these layers above the pins for maybe about 5 minutes or a few minutes or so. After it's fully broken in, you will no longer see that happening. Okay, I've just finished rotating the 3 sides with the pins in there, and you can notice that if you spread it apart, you'll notice the scraped plastic under there. So, and you should have already noticed how much smoother the cube is. I mean, if you just turn these layers, yeah, you'll just notice a big improvement. And another thing is that when you turn these layers and it goes across the pin like this, the pins will also be breaking in that side too. So don't fret if it starts, yeah, locking up like this. It's turning it a little rough. Again, do not turn the cube rough, because it might still cause the pins to come out. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the process of re-gluing in a pin. Now, again, there's no need to do this if only one fell out and your internal mechanism is staying in alignment just fine. But if 2 or more fell out, or if the internal mechanism is still getting out of alignment with up to 3 pins, then, yeah, first try gluing in the 4th pin again. And if it's still getting out of alignment, then that probably means your pins are too short and you're just going to have to re-glue them all in. So, first, find the spot where your pin is missing. It's in this one. And then just pop out all of these edge pieces so that you get a nice clear area to work with. There's no need to take the puzzle completely apart. Okay, and note that they need to be pointing up towards your V-Cube logo here. And you want to clean out the old super glue. Okay. then just take your thumbtack and stick it in there and just clean it all out. Okay, so after it's all nice and cleaned out, you got most of the super glue out of there, then you just glue in the pin, basically the same way as you did before. Alright there, so I got the pin back in place. And be especially careful not to get super glue down into the screw. If you do see that happening, then you'll have to take your cube all the way apart so that this piece doesn't stick up so much, and you can work with it to prevent the glue from bonding. Alright, so now I've got all the pins glued in. Well, actually, the pin I just glued in fell out again, so whatever. As long as the internal mechanism stays in alignment, I'm not going to try to fix it again. So now, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, is that these outer layers still click a bit, while these inner layers turn very smoothly. Alright, so the fourth modification, we are going to put in dirt to smooth out those straight edges in the pieces. So what we're going to do is just take this dirt here. I just got it from outside, and I filtered it with this strainer thingy so that I'd only have this nice powdery stuff in it. So what we're going to do is just take out some pieces and just stick in some dirt. Just like this. So just take out pieces and put some dirt in several places. Alright, and just move these outer layers like this. Don't worry about doing the inner ones. I mean, that could greatly interfere with the pins. So don't bother with the inner layers, because those are already smooth. Just worry about these outer layers, and so just continue working this in. Ugh. Ah. Okay, so just continue breaking it in until it gets as smooth as this. So it will still have a slight bumpy feel, but after you clean out the dirt and lubricate it, it will be much better. So I'm just gonna put it on a Frisbee here and just take it apart. So, and then we'll take it upstairs to wash. Alright, so I'm at my dishwasher here, and I'm going to be using this strainer type thingy to wash my pieces in the dishwasher. And this won't hurt your vinyl stickers at all, so you don't need to worry about that. But I'm going to hand wash this core because probably the least exposure it has in the water, the less chance it has at rusting it. So I'm just going to take about half the pieces. Okay, and then I'm going to take this lid here with these twisty ties and this string on here, and I'm gonna attach it to the top of this to cover all the pieces. Okay, there we are. So I got the strings attached, and let's see, if I shake it, none of the pieces come out. So this is nice and secure. And you'll have to use your own imagination to come up with something like this. So, yeah, and if you can't come up with anything, then you'll just have to be stuck with washing the pieces by hand, which is a very long and grueling process. Now, you'll probably also want to wash the pieces along with a bunch of other dishes, so that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I'll just set them down right there and start the dishwasher. Alright, so I got all the pieces washed, and I have assembled it. And the pieces do have a little dirt left on them, so yeah, you can kind of see it there, but that shouldn't pose a problem. So they are much cleaner than before, and you can notice it a little underneath, but yeah, that'll eventually wear off, as I'd imagine. So now the outer layers turn much smoother. So, although there is still a very slight clicky feel to it, because, you know, this dirt doesn't scrape off nearly enough plastic to, you know, make the cube looser than before. I mean, if you examine the pieces, you won't notice that much scratch marks. It's just to slightly smooth out those bumps. So anyway, now time to lubricate it. I'll be using Jigaloo silicone spray. The CRC also works too. So I'm just going to take it out and spray it in several points. And if you have the straw, go ahead and do that. You know, you don't want the outside of the plastic to dissolve too. And with the straw, which I lost, is so much more convenient. So just continue lubricating it just in several spots. Okay, so now I've lubricated it a good amount, and you may notice that in your cube, it may kind of have a greasy feel to it. Like, that just means the Jigglypuff hasn't evaporated yet. So what may just be a good idea is to take out a few pieces and just blow into it to get the Jigglypuff to evaporate. So just doing that in a few points should help it to evaporate and get rid of that greasy feel. So, yeah. Now, when it comes time for you to start solving your cube, I recommend that you do the white and yellow centers first. This way, when you're doing the remaining 4, you're putting the pins to a good test. And as you're solving them, if you notice this problem where the layer slightly locks up, but if you give it enough force, it clears up again. That's when the inner mechanism gets out of alignment just ever so slightly. And I've been noticing this problem too. And it's because I have 3 pins in there, 1 fell out, and they're kind of short. So if that ever happens to you and you want your cube to live up to its full potential, then you may want to consider gluing in some new pins. Alright, I believe I have finally gone over everything in this tutorial. I am so sorry about how long it is, but it should help you nonetheless. Thanks for watching.